Now we come to the last account, which is, I think, it is the major one. It is the one that makes me to argue that the whole story will be about the house of David. So the last one. So what I've done, we've looked at the first 11 accounts or Toledo's, focusing in Genesis, structuring Genesis, or putting these stories together in Genesis, and keeping on narrowing the focus, and ended with Israel. And then outside of Genesis, you get the one that we've done previously on the book of Numbers, chapter 3, verse 1, which focused on Aaron and Moses. Now, the last one that we see, formula, again, this is a formula because the word Toledo can be found in other places. It can mean genealogy, but this formula, which says these are the accounts of, or these are the Toledos of, it's only these that I've mentioned. So the last one is found in the book of Ruth, chapter 4, verse 18, the last chapter of the book of Ruth. And it says, it's a Toledo of Perez. Perez is the son of Judah. In the sons of Israel, or in the sons of Jacob, you have 12 sons, and one of the sons is Judah. So Judah had two sons, which were twins, and the other twin is Perez. Now, then it traces the line from Perez up to Boaz, up to the father of David, and then to David. So it ends with David. So it looks like this one, the focus wants to shift to David. It says the story from now on will be about David, or the house of David. Now, the book of Ruth, although the book might have been written later, we can see in the Jewish scriptures that it's not categorized with the books that are called prophets or former prophets. You have the Torah, which is the first 5 books of the Bible, Genesis to Deuteronomy, in the Jewish scriptures, and then you have prophets, prophetic literature, which are called former prophets and later prophets. Former prophets will be what we call historical books, beginning with Joshua to the book of Kings. And then after that you have another category called writings. The book of Ruth falls on that category that is called writings. So it's not, chronologically, it's not associated or put after the book of Judges. But our Bibles, following the Greek translation of the Old Testament, they put the book of Ruth after Judges. Now, of course, there is a reason to do that, because the story of Ruth, although maybe it was kept orally, it falls around the time of Judges. So I usually say the story of Ruth, or the book of Ruth, is not about Ruth. It is about the house of David. That's why it ends here. Even reading the story itself, Ruth is found in all sections of the book of Ruth, but the headings or the topics on how the story is arranged, it's not, Ruth is not part of the topics. I usually divide the book into 3 episodes because of looking at how the Hebrew is written, or how the Hebrew is arranged in the book of Ruth. So in chapter 1, the topic is Elimelech, the father of the house. So it's the story, chapter 1 is the story of Elimelech and his house. Because he dies, his sons die, and then Ruth and Naomi are left behind, and then they have to come back to Jerusalem. Then the second episode is chapter 2. This is how the Hebrew arranges according to their topics. So chapter 1 is the story of Elimelech. Chapter 2 is the story of Naomi. You can see how chapter 2 begins. It will say, now Naomi. So it forms a topic, a second topic. So the story is about Naomi arranging for Ruth to be married with Boaz. And then the third episode, so first episode, chapter 1, second episode, chapter 2, chapter 2 and 3. And then the third and last episode will be in chapter 4. And look at how it begins. It begins with Boaz, now Boaz. It forms another topic. That's how the arrangement in the language of Hebrew seems to suggest. So even the third episode is about Boaz. So the story itself, although Ruth is found in all 3 episodes, but the topics are arranged with these 3 characters, Elimelech, Naomi, and Boaz. But the story as a whole, because of it ends with this account, it is the story of David. Now, how does this become the story of David? Now, let me remind you, during the time of Judges, what was happening. Israel was so wicked. Israel was evil. Now, you see this in the leaders that took leadership, or what we call judges. I usually call them maybe charismatic leaders, not charismatic in the sense of the movement, but these are leaders that arose at a particular time for that particular need. Because if you think of them as judges, you might think of judges in our modern sense, but these were leaders that arose at that particular time for a particular need. Now, if you look at these leaders, I usually call them, they are unorthodox leaders. They are leaders that were not supposed to be leaders. In other words, they did not qualify to be leaders for Israel. For example, you have Ehud. Ehud is left-handed. Now, generally, people are right-handed, and in the ancient world, for a normal person, you will have to be right-handed, especially in terms of leading the nation. Now, how can a left-handed man deliver Israel? That's something that is uncommon for them and for the ancients. So it shows that this was an unorthodox leader. It's, in other words, God took someone who did not qualify according to the ancient philosophy to lead, because people were so evil that there were no men that would be seen as natural leaders to lead Israel. And then you have Shamgar, another example. Shamgar is called the son of Anat. Anat, being called the son of Anat, does not mean that he was born by Anat, but it looks like, scholars agree that it looks like Shamgar was a worshipper of Anat, of the goddess Anat, the Canaanite warrior goddess. She was a wife of Baal, and she was the one who saved Baal when Baal was dead. But we won't look at that story. Now, you have this particular person, Shamgar. He's a foreigner, in fact. He's a Hurrian, and he's a mercenary, an Egyptian mercenary. He is in Canaan, but he is fighting for the interests of Egypt. In other words, he's hired to be a soldier for Egypt, a foreigner. And you have this particular person who is a worshipper of a goddess of Canaan, who is a mercenary of the Egyptians. This person delivers Israel. He is an unorthodox, charismatic leader. He arose at that particular time for the need for Israel. And it is God who made these leaders to be leaders. And it was a rebuke to Israel to show that during this time, there were no men who were qualified to lead Israel, that you will get foreigners who are mercenaries, who are worshippers of gods, of foreign gods, to lead Israel. So this was not a proud moment for Israel. In fact, these were embarrassing moments. Let me just highlight the last one, maybe. Deborah. Usually people, when they argue for the preaching of women or women in leadership, they go to Deborah. Look, I'm not arguing for that at this particular video, but I will just advise you not to take that story in your arguments for leadership. Look at other stories, because you will be misusing this one. Again, these were embarrassing moments for Israel. For them to be led by a woman was not something that they were proud of. It was unorthodox. It was not expected for them to be led by a woman. And you can even look at Barak, because Deborah says Barak should lead the army. And Barak says, I will not go to war without you. That's very embarrassing for them. It shows that during this time, people were so wicked that there were no leaders or no men that qualified to lead Israel. So the book itself seems to be a rebuke to Israel, to say, look at how Israel was wicked. Now, the story of one family, the family of Ruth and Boaz, comes into the front at that time, the story of Ruth. During this time that is so evil. I mean, even if you look at towards the end of the book of Judges, you will see that there was a woman that was raped and cut into 12 pieces, and they say, we have never seen such a thing in Israel, such wickedness in Israel. So it ends at a sad and bad note, the book of Judges. But the book of Ruth says, when the story of Ruth took place, it took place during the time of Judges. And what is the message about David here, or the house of David? The message is that even in the darkest moments of Israel, in the wicked moments of Israel, the house of David kept the faith of Israel. It is only the house of David that kept the faith of Israel. So that's why now, from now on, the story will be the story of David. And what we will do in the next video, we'll show just some examples of how to read other stories in the Old Testament in light of the house of David. Because this is the house of David, or the one that comes from the line of David, is the one who will restore the humanity to the image of God and establish the presence of God among men. So I will see you in the next video.